Hello, welcome back to my channel Christian Faith and Fiction. My name's Lou and today I'm going to be sharing with you the top 10 Christian fiction books that I read last year. Now the way that I rate books is I give them a mark out of 10 on my blog and then that changes to out of 5 on Goodreads. So all of the books I'm going to mention in this video I gave 5 stars on Goodreads, but that means some of them on my blog I gave 9 out of 10, some 9.5 and some 10 out of 10. So I'm going to start with some honourable mentions. The first one was A Christmas in the Alps by Melanie Carlson, and this is a contemporary Christmas Christian romance, and I gave that one 9 out of 10. Then The Captive Maiden by Melanie Dickerson is a historical romance based on a fairy tale, and I gave that one 9 out of 10. Chasing the White Lion by James R. Hannibal, I also gave 9 out of 10. This is a kind of contemporary thriller. 3 Missing Days by Colleen, Coble, I gave 9 out of 10. This is also a romantic suspense contemporary one. And then An Ivy Hill Christmas by Julie Klassen, I gave 9.5 out of 10. This is a Christmas historical romance. And Esther by Angela Hunt is a biblical fiction book and I give that 9.5 out of 10. So on to my top 10. It's quite hard to rank these because, as I said, I gave them all 5 stars on Goodreads, but some of these in the top 10 are 9.5, some 10 out of 10. But I have tried this year to put them in order of my personal favourites. These were all they were all great books and they're in a lot of different genres, so just purely based on how much I enjoyed them. It might be swayed slightly by where I read them in the year. I think that does play a part because the ones further away I don't remember quite so well as the ones I've just read. So you could take any of these books as my personal favourites for the year. So at number 10 I've got The Thief of Black Friars Lane by Michelle Griep. And this is a historical romance mystery that is set in London. It follows Constable Jackson Forge, who is trying to bed himself in as a member of the police force, and also Kit Turner, who is a kind of thief swindler. She wants to con the rich to give it to the poor, and they have to come together and work together when a cab driver goes missing. And I gave that one 9.5 out of 10. Then at number 9 I have A Shadow by Swanson, which is the second book in the duology of the Heirs of Neverland series. And the series is following Claire, who has kind of dust on her skin that comes off. She doesn't know what is causing it. She's trying to track down her brother Connor, and in the process she runs into Peter Pan and Tiger Lily, who are trying to escape from the Lost Boys running around London. This is a contemporary fantasy. It starts off as like an urban fantasy, if you like, and then goes more into a fantasy world. And I gave this one 9.5 out of 10. Then at number 8 I have True to You by Becky Wade. This is a contemporary romance and first book in the series. This follows Nora, who is the owner of a historical village and likes her books and romance stories, and also former Navy SEAL John, who is an adoptee, and he is looking to find his ancestry because he has an inherited condition, and he gets Nora to help him to look into that, but their kind of lives entwine together, and I gave this one 9.5 out of 10 as well. Then at number 7 I've got Secrets in the Mist by Morgan L. Busse. This is a steampunk novel set in a fantasy world. It's like a Victorian world with some kind of fantasy elements going on. So this follows Cass, who is living on the streets, and she is taken up into the ship that dives down into the mist. So the world is got this sort of toxic mist that turns people into kind of like zombies, really, if they go into it unprotected. So they have to put on like diving equipment and dive down to go and collect artifacts from that. And it also follows Theodore, who is part of the ruling families, wealthy families, and he discovers a secret that he needs to get from the mist. And I also gave this one 9.5 out of 10. At number 6, I have 2 books. The first 2 books in the Songkeeper Chronicles, and I reread Orphan Song, and then I read for the first time Songkeeper by Gillian, Bronte, Adams, and I also read the third book. The first 2 books I gave 10 out of 10. Third book I gave 8 out of 10. So this series is a Christian fantasy series set in a fantasy world. It follows Birdie, who discovers she has the gift of singing that has kind of powers attached to it. And this second book continues that story. As you can see, there are people riding on lions on the cover. It's a shiny cover, sorry, so it's reflecting the light. We see more of the world in this book and more of the powers that are part of it. I love the ending of this book, and the characters are fantastic and quite amusing in places and dark in places. So that was a really good second book in the series. At number 5, I have The Ice Swan by Ciesielski. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. And this is a historical romance story set in World War One. It follows a Russian princess who is escaping from the Bolsheviks and comes to Paris. Her name is Svetlana, and she is a very independent type of person. She's looking after her mother and her sister and trying to get them settled at some place to stay in the city. And she meets a Scottish duke, I think. His name is Wynne, who is a doctor and working out in Paris during the war. And the story follows the two of them, and they were such good characters and really original kind of characters to me. They kind of sparked off each other a lot, and I really enjoyed their story. So I gave that one 10 out of 10. At number 4, I have a collection of contemporary romance novellas, and this one is called Once Upon a Summer by Andrea Boyd, Toni Shiloh, Teresa Tysinger and Jaycee Weaver. And this is contemporary romance, Christian contemporary romance, and each story is based or kind of adapted from a fairy tale. So the first one is based on Rapunzel, the second is Beauty and the Beast, the third is Goldilocks and the Three Bears, and the fourth was, I think, The Princess and the Frog. I loved to see how they made the connections with the fairy tale. Some of them followed the story in a kind of strong way, others were a bit more loosely based around it, but they were all really great stories, and they had faith element to them, so I gave that collection 10 out of 10. So coming into the top 3, number 3 was The Paris Dressmaker by Kristy Cambron. This is a historical romance, kind of espionage story based in World War II. It follows 2 different women, but also at 2 different times on their timeline. So there's like 4 perspectives following 2 characters. It's not like a dual timeline story where you've got like one in the modern day and one in history. They're both in during the war, but at different times in the war. So it's a little bit confusing listening on the audiobook, not being able to check back which perspective you are in. So I recommend having a physical copy of this to check alongside. But it was fantastically written, really well done with the splitting of the different stories, and it didn't feel like it were just jumping randomly between stories. There was a kind of narrative flow that went through the whole book as a whole as well. It was fantastic. It follows Leela, who is a dressmaker, and she makes a dress. She's using her dressmaker skills to infiltrate the Nazi elite, and then another lady called Sandrine, who finds the dress when she's curating artifacts for the museum. And I gave that story also 10 out of 10. So the final two books, number 2, it's Baby It's Cold Outside by Susan May Warren. This is one that I've read most recently. This is a Christmas historical Christian romance character-driven story where 5 people are trapped in a house in the snow, and they have to sort through sort of their past and things that have been going on, and work together. So this one is 10 out of 10, obviously, and it was a fantastic Christmas book that went onto my favourite Christmas book list. And then finally, my book at number 1. Have you guessed which one it's going to be yet? This was my favourite, I think. Of all my favourites, I think this was my favourite. And that is A Portrait of Loyalty by Rosanna M. White, which is the 3rd book in the Codebreakers series. I gave the whole series 10 out of 10. And I think this was my favourite of the 3. This follows Lily, who is a photographer working for the Code Breakers department, doing making photography and faking photography and checking photos for fakes and things like that. And she meets a guy called Jivon, I think that's how you say his name, and he is from Russia, and he has come over to escape from his enemies, and he works for the Codebreakers department, and there's like things going on from his past. There's stuff going on to do with the war, and there's elements of suspense that build throughout the book, as well as the romance that's going on. This was really lovely book. It has some really poignant moments in it, and some dramatic moments in it, and some really lovely romantic things as well. So I think this one is my favourite out of all of my favourite books. So let me know down in the comments which was your favourite book of last year. Have you read any of the books that I've read? Let me know what you thought of them in the comments. Thank you so much to everyone who has subscribed to my channel. Thank you to everyone who comments regularly or who likes my videos. I do appreciate it, and it also helps my channel. I hope you are having a fantastic reading week. Until next time, God bless. Bye.